Hi, everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final class of the Women of Publishing Leadership Series Masterclass course. I'm Jill DeBartok. I head up the Women in Publishing Leadership Series program and the North America Scalable Sales team and our partnerships team. I'm really excited to have Patrick here today. Patrick's going to be giving us all kinds of tips and tricks on monetization. And just to give you a little bit of background on Patrick, he leads up our, he's an account executive on our new partnerships team. So he gets to work with new partners and tell them all about our cool Google products. Maybe just to kick things off, Patrick, do you have a fun fact you want to share with our audience today?
Ooh, fun fact. So my favorite Google fun fact is on my very, very first day of work. I went to the restroom and there was a paper towel dispenser that said, you have to say, "Hey Google, dispense paper towel." So I was literally walking up to the paper towel dispenser saying, "Hey Google, dispense paper towel, dispense paper towel." And I was like, "Why is this paper towel dispenser not working?" And somebody walked in and was like, "Yeah, that's not real."
Oh no! Well, hey, maybe it's something you can share with our product team.
Yeah, I'll send it to the Eng team right away. Product feedback.
That's really funny. Sorry about that. Okay, great. Well, without further ado, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Well, hey everyone. Like I said, my name is Patrick, and I'm really excited to close out the Women of Publishing Leadership series with monetization tips and tricks. Hopefully, at the end of this presentation, this webinar, you feel like you can walk away with ideas and things that you can take back to your website, your blog, your passion project, and hopefully maximize monetization. And if you don't already have a website or blog or passion project, hopefully this will inspire you to show you how easy it is to stand up a website and really start generating revenue from it. So let's dive into it. So I've organized this presentation, this webinar, into three core pillars. First, building for today, in which we'll discuss things and tips that you can do to really make sure you're providing your users with the best possible way to access their content. The second is engaging your users. So we'll walk through types of content that we tend to share online and content that users like to read and get value from. We'll also dive into a little bit of like social media best practices and show you what the best way to actually grow your audience is. And lastly, we'll go into unlocking revenue through, of course, like our Google products. And I've saved this for last because I cannot emphasize enough how important those first two pieces are. And if you're not building for today, you're not engaging your users through quality content, it's going to be challenging to monetize your content as well as you'd like it to be. So first off, building for today. Now, if you go to your website and go check your Google Analytics, and if you don't already have Google Analytics, I can't recommend it enough. It's a free product that the folks here at Google have made. And it's really powerful to gain insights on how your website is performing today. But go ahead and go to your Google Analytics and actually see how many of your users are coming from mobile devices like feature phones or smartphones. In this day and age, people are accessing content from their phones more and more and using their desktop devices less because they want to keep up with friends. They're checking out social media and their favorite platforms and texting friends. And that's naturally how we tend to share and engage with content that we write online. So with that being the case, building for a mobile-first world is extremely important, having a mobile-first strategy. So when it comes to building your website, you want to make sure that your website is super fast. You want to make sure that it's optimized for page speed, and page speed is a really critical part of the web and monetization. In research with Kinsta, we found that 74% of users will actually abandon websites if they don't load within 5 seconds. And if you think about that, most of your users are accessing their content from the mobile web, and 74% of them could be leaving if your content isn't loading fast enough. So you really want to make sure that your website is loading as fast as possible. Second, you want to make it easy for your users to navigate and explore. So if I'm landing on a website because I want to find out what are the best museums to actually check out while I'm in Rome because I'm planning a trip, maybe at the end of it you should surface an article about the best restaurants to go to or the best way to get around Rome. You want to be able to maximize the time on spent for that user by surfacing articles that you think they would enjoy based on that piece of content that they're reading. And lastly, you want to make it consistent. If you have a particular experience on your desktop, you want to translate as much of that as possible to your mobile web experience. You want that user to feel at home. So regardless of wherever they're accessing that content, they know exactly where to go to discover their favorite article, their favorite subject, and really get the most out of the content that you've spent so much time and effort to create. But going back to page speed, a really great tool that I send to all of my publishers when I first meet them is the Page Speed Insights tool. So if you go to Google search, drop in Page Speed Insights, it should be the first thing that comes up. And you can go ahead, drop your URL in, hit Analyze, and it'll actually provide you with a score of how your website is performing today with regards to page speed. Like I said, 74% of users will abandon your site if it's not loading within 5 seconds. 40% of your users will abandon if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. And in our research, 1 out of 3 users have said that page speed is the most important factor when accessing content through the mobile web. And the Page Speed Insights tool will actually provide you recommendations that you can go back to your website and know what exactly to improve to maximize that time it takes for your users to actually access that content. Now, if you're looking to actually gain a leg up on page speed, I cannot recommend AMP enough. AMP, or Accelerated Mobile Pages, is an open source framework that we have built and pushed out to the open source community to actually continue to build and expand and provide value to the entire community. So think of AMP as like these little building blocks, and they're the building blocks that you can use to build your website. And each and every block is built and optimized around page speed. So if you want your website to load instantaneously and you want your users to access their content as quickly as possible, I cannot recommend AMP enough. If you go and search it online, it should come up pretty quickly as well. So now that you have a website to actually deliver content to users as quickly as possible, the next piece is engaging your users through valuable content. And we tend to read a ton of content online. So when you're thinking about what type of content should I actually write about, think about the types of content that users share. And we tend to share a variety of different types of content. Obviously, the more shareable a piece of content is, and the more value that you provide to those users, the more likely you are to consistently drive ad revenue towards that website, that article, that piece of content that you've written. So the first type of content that we share is emotional content. As cheesy as it sounds, when we care, we share. So if you are able to invoke and make that user who's reading your content feel happy, sad, and it doesn't matter what type of emotion it is, but if you're able to evoke some type of emotional response from your users, from your audience, they're more likely to share that with their friends and family, whether it be online or directly with friends. The second is social proof. We tend to share content that makes us feel like we're cool and smart and keeping up with the times. So creating social proof content is another example of content that we share online. The third is practical value. So this might be content that you're less likely to share online on social media. Maybe if you are like the brand that wrote it, you're more likely to share it. But practical content can be, I'm going to Europe and I want to know the best airlines, the best airports to fly into. That might not be something I share on social media, but it might be something that I'm more likely to share with a friend or family member that I know is traveling to that place. So practical value is a really good idea and starting out point for content that we share online. And lastly, our stories. We tend to not share information, we tend to share stories. And since the start of time, we've always kind of gathered around a campfire and swapped stories, whether it be true or mythical, fun, engaging, stories that really draw a user in, or an audience in, and they can walk away feeling like, oh my God, this was an incredible story, I'm going to share this with a friend. That's the type of content that we share online. So now that you have a good idea of the type of content that we share online, here are some ideas for content verticals for you to get started, and content verticals that tend to drive really good ad revenues. So the first is evergreen content. So evergreen content is content that is always accessed no matter when. So it doesn't get impacted by seasonality as much, time of year, things that are happening in the world. It might not get a ton of users visiting that content all at once, but it might be something that will consistently drive users to your web page over a long period of time. So an example of evergreen content might be, going back to like the travel example, it might be, what is the best way to pack a suitcase in the most efficient way? Really obscure. It's probably not something that's going to be trending online and blowing up in social media, but it's something that people are always going to be searching for, and it doesn't get impacted by location, time of year, or seasonality. Now, the exact polar opposite of evergreen content is trending content. So trending content is content that is created around what's happening or what's going to happen. So it's typically tied to real-world events or upcoming events itself. So if you think about, if you have a jazz blog, you have a music blog, and you want to cover, say, like a jazz festival that's coming to your town, you might write an article about how, so-and-so is coming and they're going to put on an amazing festival, and in that article you're providing them the time, the location, the details, and maybe even a review about those artists themselves and why they should go out and go to that jazz festival. And lastly, in-depth content. And this kind of goes hand in hand with stories. People love to read in-depth articles. So if you have a topic or a subject that you're really passionate about or you're really knowledgeable in, go really deep in like one article or even a series of articles about that topic that you love, and really draw that user in and bring them in and build that connection with them. So now that we have a really fast website, we have great content, we know what we're going to be writing about, the next step is how do we actually engage users and deliver that content to them? So email is certainly one way. So if you have an email list of people that have provided you their information, you can certainly send that content to them. But social media is another really great channel for you to use. And social media, while it's great, it is a really challenging platform to use. And I think this comic actually says it perfectly. So what's the big campaign idea? We're going digital. We're going to use Facebook, we're going to use YouTube, a mobile app, Pinterest. What are we going to do with all these channels? I don't know. We'll figure it out later. And as sad as it is, a lot of publishers run into this trap where they just see their social media as just a megaphone. They're going to use Facebook and YouTube and Pinterest in the exact same way. Or they'll just post the link to and the title of the article on social media on every single platform and expect users to engage with them. And that can't be farther from the truth and the exact opposite of how they should be using social media. So if you're a web publisher, you're a blogger, you've spent so much time and effort to create this valuable content, you really want to think of social media as an extension of your website and of your voice. And each of the users that sit on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter are different. They're used to engaging with you or engaging with other people on that platform in a different and unique way. And you want to make sure you're tailoring that experience for them that will actually maximize value for them. So some social media best practices. First off, post regularly. And this, going back to Google Analytics here is your best friend. Go back and actually see when are people most likely to visit your website. I would be willing to bet that most people are accessing your website during the weekdays, when they're commuting, when they're maybe bored at work, and or maybe when they're on the way home or during the lunch hour. Less people tend to visit websites on the weekend, so you want to really maximize the opportunities to reach users by posting as much as possible during the week. And when it comes to posting regularly, I can't recommend enough just putting together a spreadsheet and put out like all of the social media channels that you have and the times and days that you actually want to post that content. And you can even break it out by, this is the subject line that I want to put in, the copy, the link, the image. And that way, after you've posted it, you can actually go back and see, what was the engagement of that piece of content and drop those metrics, drop those numbers in there, and you can look at that later. And we'll get into measuring in a little bit. And then next is think creatively. Not every single post that you put on social media has to drive clicks to your website. Don't feel compelled that you need to link out to your website or blog. Like I said, social media should be an extension of your website, of your voice. So if you think you can convey a message and provide value to that user, engage users through just a picture or a video that you upload directly to social media, it's completely fine to do that. And when you do want to drive users to an article that you've written, obviously have a clear call to action, but because you've built this really robust relationship with them and you've had this exchange of value they're more likely to go ahead and click in on that article and actually read the the post that you've taken the time to actually read. And lastly, and this is probably the most important one, measure every single thing. You want to test, measure, and iterate as much as possible. So when you're going back to that spreadsheet that you've created, see what actually worked, see what didn't, and double down on the things that really improved your engagement. And you also want to set engagement goals for every single one of your social media platforms. So whether it be YouTube video views, whether it be likes, comments, shares, set those targets for yourself, and then slowly tweak the copy, tweak the messaging, tweak your voice even on social media, and keep working towards hitting those targets and really making the most of your social media, because it's obviously a great platform to engage your users, but it's also a great platform to grow your audience over time. So now that you have hopefully a really fast website and you have good ideas for content that we share online or content that we write about, and then of course social media best practices, the next step is really unlocking as much revenue as possible. Publishers used to have to actually call advertisers, and we've obviously built a number of robust solutions that takes all of that away and makes it super, super simple for you to generate revenue from your products. We've been in this business for over 13 years, and we have over 2 million publishers that we've worked with. So we feel really confident in the products that we've built and in their ability to drive value to you, the publisher. So we have a number of products that you can hopefully use and take back to your websites, or maybe you're already using them in which you can generate revenue from the content that you've created. The first is Google AdSense. Google AdSense is a really easy solution for you to start generating revenue from your websites. One product that we released within Google AdSense is actually called Google Auto Ads, and it's literally as simple as dropping in one line of code into the header of the web page. And we use our powerful machine learning technology to actually understand where are users most likely to engage with your content and want to see ads. Because obviously, when users are getting value from the content and they're seeing ads next to it, they're more likely to click on those ads, and obviously you're getting paid out for those clicks and for those impressions. So AdSense Auto Ads is a great way to almost set it and forget it and let us do the heavy lifting. Now, if you want slightly more control, AdSense also allows you to define the ad placements yourself. So if you really want that control, you can define those ad placements, and anytime a user actually loads your website, we'll run an auction and let the highest high-quality advertiser actually fill that ad slot. And obviously, you're getting paid out for your content and those page views and those impressions. Now, if you're looking for a little bit more control, and maybe you want to bring in other sources of advertising demand, Google Ad Manager is really the next step tool that you want to use. Ad Manager has a number of some of the largest publishers in the world use Google Ad Manager, so it really is a robust product for you to maximize the amount of monetization that your website is using. And lastly, Google AdMob. So if you have a mobile app, whether it be in the gaming vertical or the reference vertical, or some type of utility app that you've built, Google AdMob is a really end-to-end mediation and monetization solution that'll allow you to create various different types of ad units, whether it be a rewarded video ad or an interstitial video ad, or even a native or your traditional banner ads. And it really is an easy solution for you to start monetizing that app that you've spent so much time to build. Now, if you're looking for even more expert guidance, and maybe you just want to focus on creating valuable content and building that connection with users themselves, we do have our Certified Publishing Partner Program, or GCPP. We love our acronyms here at Google. And our GCPPs, our certified partners, are experts that we've deemed able to provide the full extent of Google products and services to you, the publisher, whether you have a website or an app. We basically task them with helping publishers and setting up, optimizing, and maintaining monetization. So at any point during the year, you're making the most revenue possible from your website, and you can just focus on creating that content and growing your user base and your audience. So just to kind of recap what we've discussed, first, building for today. Site speed is really, really important. Like I said, 74% of your users could be abandoning your website if your web page isn't loading in less than 5 seconds, and that's a massive revenue opportunity, and it's a massive thing that you can probably fix and continue to work towards. So building towards page speed is incredibly important. When it comes to engaging your users, you really want to be creating content that's valuable. whether it be emotional content or practical content. You want to provide users with that ability so they feel like they're getting something out of the article that you've spent so much time to write and create, or maybe even capture photos for. When it comes to ideas for content, think about that evergreen content. Users are constantly going to be going back to it and discovering it online, or even trending content, so you can think about what events are coming up in your area or what's happening in the world, and go ahead and write about that content itself. And then, of course, we touched on social media. Social media is a really powerful tool, but you should be thinking about each of those platforms uniquely and measuring and optimizing for that audience and how those users like to engage with your content online. And lastly, and of course, it's saved for the last because, like I said, I cannot stress enough how much building for today and engaging your users through valuable content is important. But unlocking your revenue is really that last piece. Whether you're a web publisher and you want to use Google AdSense or Google Ad Manager, those are great solutions that we work with. Like I said, over 2 million publishers, and they're fairly easy to implement and use. And if you are an app publisher, you can use Google AdMob to monetize your content. So hopefully those are the monetization tips and tricks that you can go ahead and take back to your website, your app, and start iterating and start improving and really making the most of your ad revenues. So without further ado, you want to dive into questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you so much for walking through that. I know it's a really hot topic, right? And really interesting topic for our partners, especially some of our small, medium business partners out there who, there's a big world out there of what we should and shouldn't be doing with our sites and our contents and our apps. And we're getting information from lots of different sources and maybe some of our colleagues and friends in the business. And I think it's really nice to kind of drill down, like if there's 3 main things you want to think about, like here are the 3 main things, and break it down from there. And for our publishers who are listening today or watching, figure out which ones you want to invest in first, second, third, set a sort of priority list like you were saying earlier. All right, so a couple questions for you.
Awesome.
One is, we get a lot of questions often from our partners around site speed and page speed. So if you're a publisher, how should they prioritize content over site speed?
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, content is king. We probably hear that a lot in the industry. So if you're not creating valuable content, users aren't going to go to your site to begin with. So I would say prioritize quality content over site speed. And it's not to say that it's not important. It is one of those 3 pillars that I think are really important to focus on. But you really want to focus on the quality of the content and how you're engaging with those users first.
Okay. Great. Okay, so another question is, how do you advise staying on top of trending things to write about? You talked about trends versus evergreen, so how do you advise doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think when it comes to trending content, following social media is certainly one way to keep up with what people are discussing, what popular culture is talking about. Another great tool is actually Google Trends. So if you go to Google search and just search Google Trends, it should be the first thing that comes up. And you can actually see what are people searching online. And you can actually drill down by, if you live in a different country, you can actually see on the country level, like what are people discussing, what are those hot subjects, and you can take that to the drawing board and write a piece of content about that subject.
Oh, cool. Another thing I use is Google Alerts. Sometimes I'll just type into a different Google alert and stay on top of what's happening in the industry for, say, like AdMob or for some of our app publishers.
Cool.
Okay, great. So how do you know if your content and or your business model would be a good fit for products when you're comparing AdSense to Google Ad Manager? How do you make a decision?
Interesting. So I think if you're a publisher and you are starting to be approached by advertisers themselves, so say you are a travel blogger and an airline reaches out to you, or a hotel reaches out to you and says like, hey, we want to run our campaign on your website, then Google Ad Manager is really the next step in your monetization journey and the life cycle for your website. So Google Ad Manager will allow you to run those direct campaigns. So the advertiser is probably sending you creative, their banners, their content that they want you to display. So when you use Google Ad Manager, you can set a variety of criteria that direct advertiser wants to use for reaching your users, and we'll actually prioritize their campaign. And then once that campaign is exhausted, then you can rely back on Google AdSense demand, or what we call our programmatic revenues, so you can continue to maximize the value of your website and ad inventory.
Okay, great. I think that helps kind of when you're deciding at that crossroads which product, it's helpful to know.
Definitely get like a lot of
yeah.
questions from publishers about that.
Absolutely. Okay, so you talked a little bit about social media strategies, and you talked tactically about how to track your data when it comes to the channels that you're putting your content on, like Instagram or Facebook. So do you have any other practical details of the tips and tricks? Meaning, I don't know if you're talking some of your partners in terms of social networks, but any other things you've advised your partners to do or helped them create a plan around some of the social media channels?
So I think when it comes to social media, like I said, it is a beast to deal with. You certainly shouldn't dive into all of those platforms all at once. Don't feel like you need to do all of those things at once. Take things one step at a time. Don't spread yourself too thin, and really hone in that voice and that messaging for that audience. And then maybe start with Facebook, and then move to Twitter, and move to Instagram. But take it one step at a time, and making sure that you're not spreading yourself too thin is definitely really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. One other thing that we talk about on our team a lot too with some of our app developers is test.
Yep.
Test. Give it a shot, test it, look at the data, iterate like you said earlier. So don't be afraid to test, and if you need to roll it back, but it's the only way to learn, right? Okay, great. Oh, someone asked, how do you get a certified partnership? How do you work with a certified partner?
Ooh, how do you work with a certified partner?
And how do you get a certified partnership?
Oh, I guess I wonder if that's from the ad technology provider or from the publisher side. So I guess from both sides, to be a certified partner, you can go to the certified partner website and fill out an application, and one of our team members will certainly reach out and talk about what a partnership opportunity looks like with myself and my team. If you are a publisher and you are looking for a certified partner to obviously help with that monetization, then certainly go to that website. It's just a separate tab, and you can find a partner based on a variety of different criteria. We also have different partners for different areas of the world, so you can find one that is close to home and really knows your publishing business at its core.
And that was Google Certified
Publishing Partner.
Yeah. GCPP.
GCPP.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, can you share a couple examples of where you've seen publishers be really successful monetizing their sites? Like, is there anything unique or different that you've seen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, the most important thing when it comes to maximizing your revenues as a publisher is certainly viewability. You want to make sure that all of the ads that you're putting are in view. Because if I'm an advertiser, like, why would I pay for an ad that isn't going to be in view, or it's at the very, very bottom of your content? No one's ever, going below like the footer of the page. And so publishers sometimes put ads on every single inch of their site, and it just makes for a bad user experience, as well as poor viewability. And so buyers are bidding on viewability. They're bidding on the most viewable ad slots on their webpage. And you might think like, oh, like that's probably the top of my website. It's actually not the case. It's usually actually like right below what we call below the fold. So when a user is actually reading that piece of content, that most viewable ad unit will be the one that's like right off on the right-hand side, or in line with the content itself. So maximizing viewability is probably the most important thing when thinking about your monetization strategy, as it relates to just the advertising and technology side.
Have you seen a unique implementation of that you could think of? I know it's putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the publishers that are able to maximize viewability use what are called sticky ad units. So if you have a 300 by 250 on the right-hand rail of your website, they'll make that ad unit sticky. So as the user is scrolling down, that ad is always in view, and buyers love that ad spot. And that will probably be your highest performing ad unit on your entire website.
Cool, great. All right, another question for you. I'm finding it difficult to find programmers familiar with how to implement the suggestions from PageSpeed recommendation tool. Any advice?
Ooh, it's difficult to implement PageSpeed. That's a tough question.
Yeah, figure out how to implement page speed.
I would say reach out to some of the folks in the developer community. So AMP has an open source community that you can certainly reach out to.
Right.
Like I said, AMP is just a good starting point to build your site from the ground up or rebuild your site from the ground up all around page speed. It also has a phenomenal open source development community that can actually point you in the right direction and hopefully provide you the advice and insight that you need to make the most of page speed and improve on that.
Great. Great.
And of course, yeah, then your page speed insights will go through the roof.
Could you give some more information about what the word count of an in-depth long-form article is? I don't know if that's one that you are familiar with. Do you have any recommendations?
The word count. I don't know if there's a particular...
There's not like a sweet spot, right?
There's definitely not a sweet spot. I would say don't feel the need to just put together, just keep cramming in text and content and going on and on about the same subject to make your article in depth and maximize time unspent.
Yeah.
You really want to, like I said, build that relationship with your audience, with your users, and feel like they're gaining as much value as possible for their time and their effort to read your article. So as long as you're providing that for them, keep going. Why not? Don't stop.
Can you also, correct me if I'm wrong, can't you also, through Google Analytics, know like time on site and scroll, and you can use those sort of data insights to help you understand where you're sort of losing maybe your readers?
Yeah, so a great feature within Google Analytics is obviously going to be the time spent on site, but you can actually see how many page views per session that your average user is spending. So, and obviously that's going to be critical for maximizing time and spent, and obviously ad revenues. And when you are coming up with your content strategy, think about and drill down using Google Analytics. What is the content on your site that is maximizing time on site or number of page views per session.
Great. Okay, I think there's two more questions here. One more is, native ads were only available in beta. How do I get it available to my AdMom account? Well, I know this one.
Awesome.
Native is now available on general availability as of August 7th. So check it out. It's available now. All right, and the last question, for publishers wanting to go beyond AdSense, how can publishers think about and consider AdX?
Interesting.
And you kind of addressed a little bit when you're thinking about AdSense versus Google Ad Manager. Like, how do I know I'm a good fit? Is there any other way to think about it when you're thinking about your demand source when it's AdSense versus AdX?
Yeah. So
is there a difference?
there really isn't a difference. I would say about like 95% of the buyers are the same. When it comes to AdX and AdSense, there are some misconceptions in the marketplace in that regard.
Okay.
And for the viewers out there that don't know what AdX is, since I guess we didn't include that in the webinar, AdX is a component of Google Ad Manager, and it is like the demand component to that product. But so for publishers wanting to go beyond AdSense and AdX, I would highly recommend reaching out to one of our certified publishing partners. They're there to provide you with AdX demand, as well as all of the tips and tricks and higher levels of control and monetization to provide to you. So reaching out to one of those partners, and they'll be able to provide you with AdX demand is probably like your first step.
Cool. I also heard that it can be helpful if you have a sales team. If you have an inside sales team or a sales team that can help you sort of with some of those direct deals too, that can be a good indicator if you're thinking about different demand sources.
Yeah, I mean, Google Ad Manager really is your full stack solution. So once you do start getting outreach from direct advertisers for direct deals, then certainly going the extra step and going with Google Ad Manager really is going to be the next leg up in your monetization journey.
Okay, great. I think that's it for questions today. Patrick, thank you so much for walking us through that. Really excited to have you here, and it was great having you part of the Leadership Series course. To folks who have been with us for the entire journey through the masterclass, thank you for staying with us. We will be sending out a survey on the course, and we would love your feedback on content, areas where you think we should be thinking about for our next masterclass series, which we are playing with the idea of launching around International Women's Day, Women's Week in March. So stay tuned for that. We'll be sending out more information information. We really appreciate your time and are excited to see you go out there and grow your apps and grow your sites, and reach out to us with any questions. And thank you for being a partner of ours. If you're not a partner of ours, we can chat, and you can reach out to us about potential options for getting some more tips and tricks and resources from us to grow your site and grow your business. So thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.